Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome back to the London Property Podcast. I'm Marius Nazare.
I'm Chris Mulry.
And we are back here, episode 24 or 23. Anyway, we've had kind of 3 or 4 weeks break since we last did the previous episode, and that is because we've been super busy on the ground. Obviously, we're living through unprecedented times. The last couple of vlogs we've been doing over Zoom conference calls, but now we're back in person, and we're just going to keep it short and sweet. Really, we're going to obviously the big news of the week or of the month. Chris is going to introduce, and then we're just going to have a bit of a market commentary, what's been happening from our perspective as agents in prime central London in terms of activity, which kind of property price bracket is really active, which ones are kind of still affected negatively by kind of coronavirus and travel restrictions. So we're just going to keep it very short and sweet as a commentary so you guys get a pulse of what's really happening on our patch in prime central London. So Chris, you have an article. I mean, everyone's been talking about it in the industry, and well, everyone's been talking about it in the country really. And it's the stamp duty, right?
Yeah, stamp duty, probably everyone already knows that stamp duty has been cut if you've been following any of the news on property related things. So Rishi Sunak has cut stamp duty up to £500,000. It's for first time buyers. The stamp duty, the usual stamp duty rate for second homeowners and buy-to-let investors up to £500,000 has been cut as well. However, there is still a surcharge of 3% for buy-to-let and second home owners. That's really the only kind of confusing part, that we had to look at the detail or the stamp duty calculator to figure out exactly whether buy-to-let investors and second home owners got the full discount. So for a first-time buyer buying up to 500,000, or for somebody selling their existing property and moving and buying up to £500,000, there's no stamp duty payable at all. And that's going to be effective until April next year. So yeah, you can imagine. I'll let you talk about like interest levels and like where the market's at the moment. But yeah, we just wanted to put it out there that so for a buy-to-let investor, for example, if you're buying at £500,000, if you bought before the stamp duty changes, you pay £30,000 in stamp duty tax, and now you're getting a £15,000 saving. So you're just paying, buy a £500,000 one bed or two bed flat, you're going to be paying £15,000 if you're a buy-to-let investor.
Yeah.
A zero if it's something that you're living in yourself and it's not a second home. So that is the major news. We'll put some print screens up here so you can kind of see the difference on how it's kind of affected the market in terms of the stamp duty calculator. So just keeping it brief really. How would you say it's impacted the market in terms of activity levels and stuff?
Well, obviously, given the bringing up the threshold up to 500k, that has really pushed the first-time buyer market, and the activity from first-time buyers has really surged in the since the introduction of this. So we've seen a lot more inquiries for properties up to 500, 600k. A lot of them from first-time buyers, which is really interesting because we still have lenders on the other hand, quite defensive, and they still kind of require people to come with like 15% deposit rather than 10%. But it has definitely made a positive impact in terms of level of activity from first-time buyers. And we've seen that day in, day out really. Any properties we've got up to like 600k, we've seen really good activity from first-time buyers predominantly. And also another price bracket which is interestingly very active, it's like 2 to 3 beds, anywhere between $1 million to 1.3. This is obviously in prime central London, so it probably will be different in different regions of London and outside the country. But for prime central London properties in that kind of price bracket, especially with outdoor space, because those people, I guess they can be a little bit picky because their budget is a little bit higher, and everyone in that price bracket are actually inquiring, and one of the main things is outdoor space, whether it's a little terrace, patio, balcony, whatever it is, communal garden. So those two price brackets have been very, very active. They are very active at the moment, which is very interesting. For example, we had this 2-bedroom apartment in a great development in W2, one of the most desirable period kind of developments there are in the area. And before, obviously, even before COVID and even before this stamp duty cut, we were getting maybe 1 or 2 inquiries a month, every 6 weeks or so. Now we're getting inquiries pretty much every day because it has access to a communal garden. It's a good size 2-bed. It's got outdoor space, and it's in a brilliant location next to Hyde Park. And that just shows that price bracket, is very active.
It's incredible. When I first read the news about people, I think it was through Zoopla or Rightmove, saying people are now looking for searches with outside space, and it's kind of one of the top 3 things that people are looking for. And I thought, really? Okay, well, yeah, I understand if it's a house with a garden, but around here there's not a huge amount of houses that we deal with, like in Hyde Park. And they don't have huge gardens either. So things like basement flats that are typically the period conversion things with outside space, they're normally more challenging to sell, particularly in a struggling market. But what we found is the property that you mentioned is a lower ground basement flat, but with a garden. And we've never seen, like, those types of properties now getting more inquiries just because they've got the outside space than something which is, I don't know, on the ground floor with no outside space. So if you're a client who's got a lower ground flat with a garden and you're thinking of selling, I think COVID has actually probably done you a favour for the fact that that's what everyone wants now. They want some form of outside space. So that's something which is in kind of really high demand right now. And it's not just a snippet to kind of say something, it is actually genuine. We can see that through the inquiry levels. So much so that when we're taking a property on, like the house in Richmond that I was taking on yesterday, I'm making sure that the lead shots on that just show the greenery in the outside space rather than the reception room.
It makes sense.
So that's just a brief update for what's going on.
That's the 2 price brackets that we've seen in the last 6 weeks or so, really, that have become very active, and obviously since the stamp duty introduction even more so. Anything above the price bracket between 2 to 10 million, a little bit sluggish, mainly because it's an international driven market in prime central London, so those people are not technically in London at the moment, and we've got travel restrictions, so that market is a little bit slower, and it is in some parts struggling. But anything that is good value, in essence, is still moving. So obviously the St John's Wood deal that we did 2-3 weeks ago, which we exchanged on, but that was an international buyer who's already based in London, and that's why it worked. But a lot of that market is going to struggle because we don't have the volume of people coming from overseas deploying the capital.
It's interesting that you say about the buyer on St John's Wood, because a few things that we've agreed, and this is funny, right? We're based in Hyde Park, but the last 10 sales that we've agreed, or at least 9 sales, they've all been houses slightly outside the Hyde Park patch. And we've just taken on a house in Richmond. I mean, it's outside our area, but we're more than now happy to kind of expand to houses, because we ourselves have got clients who are moving out. So they're taking money from Central, and not everyone, it's not a mass exodus of London, but there's a good market for houses right now. Anything else that we should really touch upon?
I think this is obviously, like we said, it's a very brief version of the typical podcast. Next week we're going to bring back the structure that we initially had, and we're going to talk more about what's been happening in the last week or so. But it was just more kind of to get back into it. We haven't done it for like 3 or 4 weeks. We have been super busy and it can get a bit challenging trying to like get everything organized when there's so many things to deal with at the same time. So I think that's kind of the insight. The two price brackets, just to summarize, the stamp duty cut obviously has really boosted first-time buyers to kind of do something now that there is activity on the ground. Properties between $1 million to 1.3, they're also kind of getting a lot of inquiries, and definitely that one of the big requirements for that price bracket is outside space. Even if it is a small balcony, people want outside space, which is very interesting. It's a change from obviously, we've had COVID and people realize that I need some kind of outside space, or I need to be close to a big park. Like Hyde Park or Regent's Park, Richmond Park, etc. So we're seeing that, and everyone's been talking about obviously the importance of having outside space. So that will definitely continue. But that's it really. We will be back next week with a lot more material to talk about. But this kind of concludes, this week's vlog. We're back at it. Full force, and obviously if you guys enjoy the content or you have any questions or any topics that you would like us to discuss, by all means, obviously you can find us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, on all the social media channels, and we'll be more than happy to bring and discuss your question on the vlog. Thanks for paying attention, and see you guys next week.
Good week.